Oh, these beautiful faces. So happy to see you all. All right, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to Baltimore County's first ever Community Leaders Summit, hosted by your county executive, Johnny Oshesky Jr. I'm Mandy Remmel, Director for the County Executive's Office of Community Engagement, and I am excited to see so many of our community leaders and stakeholders here today. I first want to take a moment to thank all of you for your hard work and commitment to your communities, and we appreciate your dedication in working with us to build a better Baltimore County. Community engagement is the hallmark of our County Executive's administration, and today's summit is a great opportunity for community leaders to familiarize themselves with process and policies in areas such as code enforcement, road resurfacing, and much more. We have a nice jam-packed workshop scheduled for you this afternoon. Today's summit will provide you with an opportunity to engage with staff and some of our wonderful department heads who are here today and learn all about the great resources Baltimore County has to offer. Before we begin, I want to let you know that at your tables you will find a folder with all of the information you need for today's summit, including your personalized workshop schedule. Please follow the schedule. Also in your folder, you will find a QR code that we will use during the County Executive's presentation this morning for live polling. When prompted, we will ask you to scan the QR code with your cell phone camera, and once we come to the live polling section in the presentation. If you are having any trouble, we have my staff around the room to help. You can just raise your hand and we'll be happy to assist you. But now, without further ado, it brings me great pleasure to introduce our Baltimore County Executive, Johnny A. Oshesky Jr.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the wedding music this morning. We are so thrilled to welcome community leaders from across Baltimore County to the county seat. Before we jump into the welcoming remarks this morning, I just want to first really lift up Mandy Remmel and Amanda Carr, who did a fabulous job really sort of leading this along with our entire Office of Community Engagement and some other members, but Amanda and Mandy, please just stand up to be recognized. Thank you for your putting together today's presentation. I also want to just recognize each and every one of our community leaders. You are the partners. You are the ones who are doing the work day in and day out. And you are the reasons that we get up every day and we're excited about the work. You're the reasons that we aspire to be better, and we're excited about the work we've done, but all that's yet to come. So I also want to give all of you a huge round of applause for the work that you do day in and day out. So please give yourself a round of applause. So on behalf of our administration and the Baltimore County government, we are so proud of what we've been able to accomplish these last 4 years together. And I want to thank the other members of the departments who are here at booths and at slide deck and out at tables for you today. I think I'm going to try to be able to run this slide effectively. So, am I just turning it over to Elizabeth?
Yes, you can turn it over to Elizabeth.
I've got a whole presentation, but before I do that, I really just want to say this is your day. So we're going to try to make this fun. We're going to make this interactive. We really look forward to engaging with you. You have all of the decision makers in county government alongside you today, so they'll be sitting at tables, they'll be interacting and talking to you. So before I get into my full presentation, I first want to welcome up Elizabeth Sachs, who is our Director of Government Reform and Strategic Initiatives, for her presentation. So Elizabeth, everybody.
Good morning, everybody. It is truly wonderful to see everyone gathered here today. I am in part filling in for Stacy Rogers, our County Administrative Officer, who I know very, very much wanted to be here today. And I know in future events, she will be up here sharing everything that we do and can do with you. But I am filling in for her, and I hope I do her justice. But my main purpose this morning is to just give you an overview. And we can, I guess, am I advanced one bit? Okay, let's see if I can. There we go. Is to really give you an overview of how we have approached governing in Baltimore County since the county executive took office, which is about 4 years ago. We talk about this in terms of excellence in governance, but what I really want to share with you throughout my presentation is that excellence in governance for us really means collaboration. It's collaboration within departments, it's collaboration across departments, and it's collaboration with communities and those of you who are leaders in your communities. And looking back over the past, it literally been 4 years on December 3rd, so it's feeling very close to that anniversary date. We want to share with you some of the ways in which we have done that collaborative work across government and around the county. So this is our timeline, starting with, again, December of 2018, when the county executive was officially sworn into office at Towson University. But even before that time, we were working on our transition team effort. I know a few folks in this room were part of that. We had 125 individuals participating in work groups as part of our input into what we should do in office, but mostly what the next phase of Baltimore County should look like. So we started that process actually in November of 2018, and it culminated in a report that we issued in February of 2019, which I will go into in a little more detail in a minute. Also at that time, we launched a Commission on Fiscal Sustainability. I think one of the things that I know the county executive talks about and that we're most proud of, we really transformed how we budget in this county. And again, CAO Rogers has been very, very much a part of that, and we have really changed the way departments engage in the budgeting process, the county executive's own focus, and how our OBF team, our Office of Budget and Finance team, helps us formulate the budget each year. There'll be more about that shortly, but it really started with, again, a gathering of external stakeholders who formed a commission and met diligently. We met weekly to get this report done by June of 2019, and I would say probably 3/4 of the recommendations have been absolutely incorporated into county government. So that's my pitch for participation matters. We do take ideas and try to put them into action, and I hope this summit will lead to more of that in future years. We have also, and again, the county executive, I believe will touch on this, we have had budget town halls since our very first January 2019. I'm sure many of you have participated in those. We have a town hall, was in person, went virtual, back to in person, beginning in that first budget cycle of 2019. And it has been a very valuable exercise for our budgeting process, among other things. So, and then finally, when CAO Rogers joined us, she launched a strategic planning process, which we also did. We did a lot in 2019, didn't we? She launched a strategic planning process, which at that point, and I'll show you more in a minute, really engaged our internal stakeholders, because our transition process, the county executive hadn't taken office in November of 2019, and so we were 2018, so we were still getting external input. Then when we came in, we needed to get internal input, and so that's what our strategic planning process involved. And this again, this sort of shows how we brought everything together from our transition phase to our town halls to really create a strategic plan that reflected all of the inputs, all of the collaborative insight that we had been gathering into a document, which is not in your packets, but it is online. And the really most amazing thing about the document is we use it. You know, it wasn't a sit on the shelf exercise. We actually, as we budget, as we make plans throughout departments, individual department heads and their staff have to say, this meets goal 5, this meets goal 4. And so I just want to reiterate that everything we do, we actually put into practice. And I do hope today's work will be part of that, because that's how we roll, as they say. So I don't know if these slides are in your packet, but maybe we can share them, because I think a deeper dive going online and looking at some of these documents, the transition report, the strategic plan, some of the commission reports would be worthwhile, because it's been a lot of work. And I do know someone who was on a Zoom, or really WebEx effort, our commission on procurement, Carla Nelson, Chambers, is here. She came up to me this morning, she said, "You're in person!" So we managed to do these efforts even in the virtual days. And I appreciate your introducing yourself. And as soon as I heard your voice, I knew who you were. Okay, so this is, as I referenced, we have 6 strategic goal areas that are part of our strategic plan. And again, a lot of work went into this. This was an internal exercise involving every single department. And I will read these to you in case you can't see them and then elaborate a little. So our first goal is around vibrant communities. Our second goal has to do with educational excellence for lifelong learning. That goal is in close collaboration with Baltimore County Public Schools and the Community College of Baltimore County. We know that education is more than just a Baltimore County government exercise. Our budget reflects that, and so we are engaged in a number of collaborative projects with CCDC and BCPS. We're also very focused on equitable decision making, which really looks at how we budget, how we hire, how we make resource decisions up and down across departments, so that we're really using a full equity lens to all of the things that government does. So there are a lot of efforts and projects and initiatives that departments are doing that have to go through that lens in particular. Same with sustainability. We are very focused on the impact of climate change, how we can reduce our carbon footprint, both as government and through some public education initiatives. Both goal 3 and 4, we have individuals known as chiefs, but we have individuals dedicated to those areas. The county executive appointed a chief equity and inclusion officer in the early days. The initial person has moved on. We're recruiting for a new chief of DEI. Also, our chief sustainability officer, Jen Iosa, who I don't see right now, but she has definitely made a huge impact getting us to think about how we keep the lights on, how we look for solar power, how we engage with environmental advocacy groups. So she's really given us a new way of thinking about what sustainability means in all respects. We are also, goal 5, that's kind of what I do most days, government accountability. And the CE in our next presentation will touch on that, but we have been very focused on how do we measure ourselves? How do we measure the funding that we spend on various projects? How do we use data to inform decisions? So I don't want to steal the thunder of my colleagues, but you will hear a lot more about data and how we use it, not just that it exists, but how is it helpful to everything we do in a few minutes. And then finally, again, under the leadership of our county administrative officer and our head of HR, Rhoda Benjamin, who also may be here, we have really looked at empowering the county workforce, making sure that we are understanding and rewarding the work that gets done to make county government work. And so there have been a number of employee-focused initiatives. We do some data analysis to understand what our talent pipeline is, what our succession planning is, just really mindful about how we keep the people that make this government work and who are so valuable, both happy, if you will, but also how do we keep the pipeline of talent going. And I will say that the virtual work that we did for a while was a bit of a challenge, but I think we've gotten past that, and people are back at work and in person and feeling like they can engage as we did back in 2019, where we got a lot done, it looked like. So yes, this is a reminder of the realities of managing government. We are definitely collaborative, as I said. The CAO likes to talk about the wagon wheel approach, where for every given project there's a hub, but then there are a lot of spokes that go out, but everybody comes together to work together to focus on that hub. But some days it feels like while we come together, we are definitely rebuilding the plane as we fly it. I'm sure you can relate to that and other things that you do, but it still reflects collaboration. So everybody brings what they know best, and even if you're trying to plan, but it also feels like you should have had it already. This is sometimes our MO, but I will say when you hear and see throughout the day what we've accomplished, it works. So we like this graphic for lots of different reasons. So as I said at the outset, we had the transition team where we did gather a lot of you and others to talk about what Baltimore County and Baltimore County government could do differently, but we didn't stop there. So our collaboration continued in a number of commissions and work groups, as well as some studies. So as I said, we had the Blue Ribbon Procurement Commission at the outset, we had the Commission on Fiscal Sustainability about how we reform our budgeting. Since then, we've had a Blue Ribbon Procurement Commission, which has looked at how we need to change and update, really, a lot of our procurement practices. That was published last winter, so we're in the process of implementing that. We currently have a Commission on Ethics and Accountability that's meeting. We also have had a number of work groups and councils in the last 4 years around affordable housing, code enforcement, diversity and inclusion, equitable policing. We've looked at how to better manage the opioid response, and also had a work group around solid waste. Again, these are efforts that involve internal and external folks, but also we write it down and then we say how much of this and when are we going to do it. I don't think any one of these documents is sitting on the shelf, which creates a lot of work, but it's also, I think, helping us for sure move the needle forward. And then finally, we've had some external input. The studies you see here was our effort in the first few years to engage some expertise on the outside. So we did look at whether across departments the county's operating most efficiently. So that we published last winter. That was our efficiency review. We also looked at whether we're working to support small and minority businesses in the most modern and efficient way. We did what we call this Disparity Study, again, with external consultants. You can see, though, we're limited on the consultants. We do a lot ourselves, and we're actually pretty proud of that, but sometimes you do need the outside experts. So we also had some consultants help us understand the water and sewer situation that's really cross-jurisdictional. I'm really, the CAO ran that process, and it was necessary then, it's even more necessary now. So we've done a business process review of our water and sewer, and then we've also had consultants in collaboration with BCPS do multi-improvement plan for all related to our schools and our capital investments in schools, my iPass, which I'm sure, that's the one I'm sure many of you have heard about. So we continue, and I hope today will be another effort to engage your thoughts. We have a lot to share, but we also hope you'll share with us, and really are grateful to see you this morning. And this is as we look ahead. I've sort of done the retrospective, but we do have a few more years under this county executive, and I see some ups and downs there, but I think it's just so the numbers fit. I don't think the downs are really part of the metaphor. It only goes up 22 to 26. We're only moving up. So thank you all very much, and I hope you have a wonderful day. I'm going to turn it back over to the county executive.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I was paying with great attention to the fact that I was a lot less gray in that inaugural picture. What a couple of years will do. I'm going to talk just a little bit this morning about some of the progress that we've made collectively. A lot of it's been done because of the feedback you all have provided at things like town halls, but also just through your engagement. What I'm not going to talk about are two pretty big things that I think would have, in other circumstances, stymied that progress, whether it was inheriting a nearly $100 million deficit when we first came into office, or this little thing called COVID-19 that we've all gone through the past 2 years. It's exciting to see so many of you in person. I think it speaks to how far we've come. But we're not going to talk about either the budget challenge that we came through together or the COVID-19 pandemic. So everything that we've done has been on top of tackling those pretty substantial challenges. So when we first took office back in December of 2018, as Elizabeth said, almost 4 years ago, if you wanted a permit from Baltimore County, you had to come here to Towson. Even if you lived near the Pennsylvania line, you had to come here. If you wanted to just build something like a shed, you had to drive more than 40 minutes to come to apply in person. And once you got there, Does everyone remember how you could pay? Cash, check, and Discover card, that's right. Now, I'm not saying it was the dark ages, but we probably weren't too far off. A department head once joked with me that county government operations operated under the 1851 rule, which is if we didn't do it back in 1851 when the county was chartered, why do it now? But when we got elected, our focus was really twofold. We really wanted to do two things. First was to push forward policies and initiatives that served our communities, but we also wanted to fundamentally change the way government operated. We were too big and we served too many people to be stuck in the last century. Baltimore County is a large, diverse jurisdiction of over 850,000 people. Our size and our budget is larger than 4 states in the United States. Just to put that in perspective. So what did we do? We launched our signature town hall series to hear directly from you and from your neighbors about the priorities. We worked diligently to create a culture of transparency, accountability, and data-driven governance. And things like these town halls truly have become the signature of the administration. In the 2 years prior to becoming county executive, there were two people total in the 2 years prior to our first budget that had testified on the county's proposed budget. Since then, thousands of you and your neighbors have showed up to share your thoughts, concerns, and ideas about the county budget. And as Elizabeth said earlier, even during the pandemic, we found ways to stay engaged, and we've learned lessons. So now we both are in person, but also record and broadcast so that others can stay connected to the work and engage with us electronically. Because of you, we once again have bulk trash pickup in Baltimore County. Because of you, we've invested more in code enforcement efforts to keep our neighborhoods clean and improve our overall quality of life. In partnership with you, we've launched a 311 service that didn't exist in Baltimore County when we came in December of 2018. So you don't have to search for a departmental number to figure out how to be served by Baltimore County. And as you all know, our amazing Office of Community Engagement is dedicated to being as responsive as possible to meet all of your needs and concerns. Because of you, we have invested significantly in more green space and recreational opportunities. In this year's budget alone, we have more than $45 million of capital funding for recreation and parks. So that means on the west side of our county, our team is in the design phases for enhancements at Wynn Oak Park. We have an imagination playground going in place at Banneker Park, and we have a new STEAM center and park going into Reynoldstown. This fall, we'll be cutting the ribbon for a new destination playground in partnership with the Baltimore Ravens in Owens Mills and the Halethorpe Civic Center. I see you, Otis. Our budget this year has $350,000 for facility improvements at the Halethorpe Civic Center. We also have funding for a new destination playground in Gwynn Oak. Here in the central part of our county, we've made investments at the Lock Raven Fishing Pier, as well as Cromwell Valley Park. We're developing a master plan for massive influxes of investment at Oregon Ridge. And this year's budget includes $6.4 million in state and county funding for enhancements at Oregon Ridge, bringing the current total funding at that site to $10 million. We've also put forward funding to improve Cloverland Park in support of our growing community of cricket players. Last, but certainly not least, there is major progress on the east side. We'll be breaking ground this fall for 2 new PAL centers, and we're planning the county's second ever skate park at Hazelwood. Progress continues for a new site, new park at Sparrows Point, and we've been working diligently with community area and rec leaders to make that happen in partnership with Trade Point Atlantic. Those of you who know anything about me know that I live and breathe and love education. As a former teacher here in the county, parent of a BCPS first grader. It's hard to believe she's going to be 7 already. But I'm so proud of the work that our teams are doing to make especially the capital investments in our schools across Baltimore County. Together, because of you and with you, we now have a $3.3 billion plan for all of our school buildings to have the bar raised by 2037. This is a plan that will ensure that every child has a seat inside the school building rather than a learning cottage. And it will make sure that there are significant investments at every school across Baltimore County so that all schools are safe, modern, and meet the needs of our 21st century students and teachers. We are also, as Elizabeth said, putting a lot of effort into making our government more transparent and to have our decisions be made by data. You're going to have an amazing presentation by Mona Babrios in just a little bit, who's our Chief Data and Performance Officer. I got it right. His team is doing incredible work, but they've helped us do everything from publish an open budget, an open checkbook platform where even today still, you and anyone in Baltimore County can go see down to the paycheck, down to the check, exactly where we're spending our money. We also have a large set of public dashboards, everything from crime to traffic stops, code enforcement. Again, this is so that you, our residents, can see exactly what's happening across the county, but also in your community. I have to say that before we got here, we weren't exactly using data to drive our decisions. There were no data dashboards. We didn't have any of that work driving internally or sharing externally. But again, we now have BC Stat, which is our data-driven performance management system. In a moment, I will be turning things over to Momin to share some of the incredible work he and his teams are leading and how it impacts your community. But before I turn it over, before I turn it over, I want to reiterate just how much we appreciate your partnership in everything that we have done, and as Elizabeth said, and hopefully all the things that we have yet to do. We know that thriving communities only exist when community leaders are at the table, and I hope that you feel like you've had a voice and you've been engaged in this process. I have to say, truly, all the things we've done really wouldn't have been possible without all of you. So, in recognition of that, we want to recognize some of our remarkable leaders. So when we convene again next year for our second annual Community Leader Summit, we plan to award Community Hero Awards for our tireless leaders who go above and beyond to make our quality of life better. So you'll be hearing more about this program, nominations, etc. next spring. We'll be asking for your input, whether it's in your community or someone with whom you're working who's deserving of a special recognition. So excited to launch this, and at this point, I will turn things over to Momin to talk a little bit about our performance management systems. Momin.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So my name is Momin Babrios. I'm the Chief Data and Performance Officer here in Baltimore County, and my main job is to manage the BC Stat program. The purpose of BC Stat is to create a data-driven Baltimore County, and I'm going to go through a bunch of slides that are going to explain how that impacts all of you and what that means here in Baltimore County. So we're going to start off by talking about the mission. Then we're going to go into how we accomplished the mission, and how we're still working towards getting better and better and better. But you're going to see a huge, an extremely large number of achievements, which wouldn't have been possible without our department heads who have bought into this data-driven culture and have helped us accomplish everything that you see in these slides. So when I think about the mission for BC Stat, which is the first data and performance management program here in Baltimore County, a lot of people, when they say the word data, they start thinking pretty complicated machine learning, predictive analytics, artificial intelligence, but sometimes lose sight of the most basic needs of what data is meant to accomplish. And that's just basic information being at the table so people make the best possible decisions for our residents. And so this is the quote that I always rely on in terms of trying to point us in the right direction when we get too in the weeds. And it's a promise that the county executive made to modernize government. And what he wanted to do with modernizing government was increase accountability, which we're going to talk about in a second, but also to define goals for ourselves. And in order to do that, we need to figure out where we are. And in order to know where we are, we need to be able to see the data that we have. And so our entire mission through the different tasks that we're going to be doing, and I'm going to go through, is going to be around the idea of how do we measure where we are and where we want to go. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about transparency. The first part of accountability is transparency, and we need to be able to explain what's going on in a way that's digestible. If we just sit there and put a bunch of numbers on a spreadsheet, a lot of individuals aren't going to be able to really understand that information and make use of that information. So what we did is we started creating these dashboards that the county executive alluded to. We have a dashboard on crime that shows the crime in the county by zip code and the various different crime types. We have a traffic stop dashboard. We have a code enforcement dashboard, which shows all the different violations that we have in the county and where they're occurring. We also have an online tool that allows you to search any address and to get information on a code enforcement violation in that space. And that's meant to make life easier for individuals so they don't necessarily have to call the Permits Approval and Inspection Department or 311. We also have the Opioid Dashboard, which shows where we have our non-fatal and fatal overdoses in the county and the trends that we're seeing. And then finally, we discussed the open budget, but where we're budgeting, and then also how we're spending that money. So how were we able to get a data-driven culture here in Baltimore County? It started with driving collaboration. So what we realized was that most of the complex issues that impact residents tend to be cross-departmental. There's no real one agency responsibility for a lot of these issues because most of the things that impact individuals, for example, whether it's like neighborhood issues, you have Office of Community Engagement, you have Permits Approval and Inspections, you have Department of Public Works and Transportation, you have Rec and Parks. Those are all stakeholders in making the neighborhood a safe and better place. So what we did is we took those 6 strategic goals that were in the Enterprise Strategic Plan and we broke them out into generic priority areas. And you can see here housing, homelessness, education, equity, transportation, public safety. I'm not going through the whole list. But the idea is that we've had meetings, cross-departmental meetings with all the different department heads in each of these different areas to identify what's the biggest problem and how do we solve it and making sure that data is driving how we solve it. And this is just a picture of some of the meetings that are happening. This was our first ever opioid stat, which is now shifted to becoming more behavioral health stat. And you can see here that when the county executive wants a data-driven culture, he's in that room. He's pretty much at every single one of these meetings, and you see that the other department heads are also committed. You see the chief of police, you see the chief of fire, you see the health commissioner, you see the director of corrections, and you see all the very senior level officials here at these meetings, looking at the data and trying to figure out how to make things better. And some of the things that we actually even accomplished at our opioid stat was identifying that we had a large cluster of overdoses that were happening at hotels and motels around Pulaski Highway. And so what do? The health department went out there and provided some of those resources, whether it's Narcan, naloxone, and other services to try to help those specific individuals. And the majority of them did accept that support. And so we are acting on this information because otherwise we'd just be looking at a bunch of graphs. So I just wanted, and we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the other stats that we have and what we talk about. So behavioral health stat, that stat was what opioid stat became when we realized that about 50% of the homicides last year had to do with a domestic violence or behavioral health related issue. So we made that the priority and started looking at 911 data, where we have the most 911 behavioral health calls. And what that's been able to lead to is it's allowed us to enhance funding with our mobile crisis team, where now you're going out with an officer and a social worker and trying to address things and de-escalate things before they turn into something worse. So that's just another idea of how we utilize that data in our behavioral health stat. We have our neighborhood stat, which is our most frequent stat, because you can imagine all the different problems we've talked about: trash pickup, code enforcement violation, rats, vacant housing. We've talked about various different topics in that space. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the successes from that as well. So we know that a lot of individuals have to call and complain about code violations. And in order to be proactive, the Permits Approval and Inspections Department and the Code Enforcement Division wanted more inspectors to be more proactive, to do these community sweeps so that we don't have to wait for a complaint to come in. And they did a phenomenal job, and we measured the data in these meetings to make sure that the investments are actually having the outcome that we want them to have. And you can see here, I can't really see what color is what, but I believe the blue is community sweeps, and you can see them increase significantly. And if I had a more updated map, you'd see that that trend is actually still continuing because we just had a meeting last week. So neighborhood stat, we also talk about different where we have vacant buildings. And some of the things that we're trying to do is identify where we have vacant buildings before someone complains about it or it becomes a public safety hazard. And we looked at where we had information around zero water consumption, so we can identify those properties. We look at where there's properties on tax sale and they may be vacant. And then we also look at code enforcement violations that noted that a property was vacant. And so we're looking at all that information and trying to work towards creating some type of action. We have a work group that's working on addressing vacancies in the county. And then also in addition to that, our code enforcement have actually gone out and done random samples to see, and identify and start the process of collecting information on vacant properties here in Baltimore County. Our sustainability staff, we talk about various things, tree canopy. We work very closely with the Department of Environmental Protection and Services, and we work with our Chief Sustainability Officer. And we talked about various different things, electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles. So one of the things that we actually had in one of our first sustainability stats was the county executive told us to create an executive order that would ask that all passenger vehicles be not gasoline, so alternative fuel, hybrid, electric. And so you can see that number start to increase. And actually, it's significantly more than that. We have a lot of orders that we just haven't received the cars, and hopefully by the end of this year, we would see probably even around a 300% increase in the number of vehicles that are not gasoline. So in addition to that, thank you. In addition to that, we were getting ready for our electric fleet here in Baltimore County, and we did some analysis on, where do we have most of our cars parked in order to figure out where we want charging stations. But we also looked at where we have the most electric vehicles in the county in general, so that we can make sure that some of this electric charging infrastructure also benefits individuals living in the county. Senior stat, we looked at various different things around senior stat. However, one of the things that we looked at most recently was 911 fall data, looking at where we have the most number of individuals calling EMS when there's a fall incident. We noticed two different trends. One trend was a lot of healthcare providers where there's a significant number of falls, and that kind of makes sense a little bit because you have a lot more seniors in that facility. Nonetheless, we're working on doing outreach to identify those areas. We're also in the process, we also saw a trend in some of the residential properties, right? So at that point, we're going out to those specific addresses and trying to tell them about our Because program, where we're trying to help create more handicap-friendly additions to someone's home, and some other interventions along those lines, identifying those properties. One of the other unexpected outcomes of this conversation is identifying illegal assisted living facilities, where the care isn't there, and we need to make sure we're aware that they're operating illegally. Youth stat talks about anything that involves infant all the way to about 24 years old. We've talked about various different things from rec and parks programming to here, food access. So one of the things that we looked at here is where we have food insecurity. We identified areas in grocery stores that are called WIC authorized retailers, and we identified spaces where we do have a lot of youth and youth that may live in poverty, where there aren't any WIC authorized retailers. And you can see here some of the examples that we talked about, and I know our Department of Economic and Workforce Development has done some outreach in that space with some of those. We also have department meetings. So in our public safety world, we know that we can't have one meeting that's gonna solve public safety. So what we do is we have a corrections stat, a police stat, and a fire stat. And these departmental meetings talk about everything from staffing, budget, but also operational issues that impact the community. One of the big things that our Department of Corrections has been able to accomplish is control dangerous substance seizures. And one of the things that they were asking for was a canine unit to help with that. And you can see that we track the progress of every investment that we have, the majority of our investments, to be able to see whether or not they're still working. Should we continue to invest? And you can see here from the yellow bars that it is working, and we are increasing significantly the number of controlled dangerous substances within the facility. Our police stat, this is domestic incidents related to 911 calls for service. Again, back to that idea where we identified that 50% of our homicides had to do with domestic violence or behavioral health nexus. And as a result, we looked at that data, and a lot of this data is meant to be presented to the police department, who have used it with our different various services, partnering with different domestic violence nonprofits that are in those spaces to try to improve resources for victims of domestic violence. So the other way, so that's how we've kind of collaborated with other departments, and I talked about transparency. So that these are two of the main principles that we've kind of put in place to make a more data-driven Baltimore County, impact residents. But the other thing that we also did is support departments. So prior to, I won't call it 1851 necessarily, but previously with departments and data, it was really two reasons why in Baltimore County you would ask for data. One is for a grant report, or two, because of justifying a decision after the fact. And that's just the reality, and a lot of governments work in that way. And we, with the help of the county executive and the departments, began to bring data to every meeting prior to the decision so they make the most educated decision. And we support a lot of departments because of the fact that data was an afterthought. A lot of departments didn't have necessarily the analytical support to be able to do a lot of this analysis. And so some of the ways that we helped was, our health department wanted to know where we were having low vaccination rates. And they had a mobile vaccination unit that they had purchased and wanted to know how to deploy it. And what you see here is on the left, you see the more red, orange colors show low vaccination rates. And within 2 months of us sharing that information with our health department, they partnered with nonprofits and different religious institutions, and you can just see the census tracts changing, which was a huge, huge success in terms of the percentage of individuals vaccinated. Our child care workers, so we have a lot of nonprofits that ask for support, ask for information, so they also can better serve the individuals in their community. And one of the things that we were asked to do is identify child care deserts, I would say, where you have a few licensed child care facilities, but where you may also have a large population of children under 5. And so we identified that information for them, shared it with our nonprofit partners so that they can better focus their resources in terms of trying to help fund licensed child care facilities in the areas that don't have any. The purpose of all this, and what we realized at the end of doing a lot of this analysis, and we continue to realize, is that what we were able to do with all these maps, merging all this data together, is we were really able to identify communities in need. But the better aspect to all of this was the fact that we could then identify the actual need, because every community has different needs. And so we put together the education data, COVID-19 data, housing data, public safety data, opioid data, food access data, and the CDC Social Vulnerability Index. We looked at all of that to be able to really tell a story about a specific community and take a structured approach to that. What that ended up how that ended up benefiting us is when the American Rescue Plan dollars were being allocated. The map on the left shows what the Treasury Department was pretty much saying you could spend money in those areas. And you can see they're called qualified census tracts, and there's not that many of them. And what we were able to do, it gives us a little bit of flexibility to identify our own areas of need. And so we took all that data that I was talking about and we created a new map, which is the one on the right that can serve much more Baltimore County residents that truly reflected need in Baltimore County. And again, some of the data there, public safety hotspots, behavioral health hotspots, vulnerable housing, domestic violence, high area deprivation index, the social vulnerability index, qualified census tracts, and also food insecurity. So I want to talk a little bit about how I already talked about how this helps us, but how it can help you in the work that you all do in your community. So we're working towards creating a community map. This community map is meant to provide a lot of the information that we use to make decisions and provide it for the community so you can better understand the issues and needs of your community, but also how you decide to allocate resources as well, and the things that you all focus on. So the way that we decided to structure this map was focusing on the social determinants of health, which comes from the Health and Human Services Department for Healthy People 2030, where they identified 5 categories of different metrics and areas that impact the quality of life of residents everywhere in the country. And so we tried to focus on picking data from these different areas so that it could be information that we can work towards and improve the quality of life of our residents. This is just a graph of some of the data around employment, housing, literacy, language access, early childhood education, access to healthy options, support systems, health coverage, etc. So our goal is to get as much data as possible in these spaces and present it to the community in a digestible way. And part of this will also have some questions that we ask at the end about what data you would like to see on this community map. So this is just an example of what the map can look like once you start to filter by specific things. So for example, this shows the heart disease in the county by the number, and so you can identify the areas that do have high heart disease. So this is just an example again of some of the many metrics that we can throw onto this map. We have a lot of economic data. I can't really see it from here, but pretty much around poverty, unemployment. We have a lot of various different information there. We have education information. And the idea would be an interactive map that you can filter and decide what you want to focus on. So it may not be the same for everyone else, but you have all of that available in one tool to be able to really focus on a specific thing. But if you did want to merge two different data sets together, you could do that. See how obesity may have to do with heart disease, etc. So again, this is just, if you were to filter just for poverty, this is what it would show, so you can understand the areas that, I believe this is the last 12 months, the number of individuals that live below the federal poverty level. And again, this is just more of those type of metrics that you can see. And yeah. So, I don't know what just happened. But that was pretty much the end of my presentation.
It's not projecting here. Give us 1 second. All right, so we're going to go ahead and switch. We are going to do some questions here, but we're going to start, Moment is going to start some live polling questions. So what we'd like everyone to do is go ahead and get out your phones, and you can scan the QR code. There's one at your table. In your packet, there should be a QR code there. And if you cannot do it from your phone, we have the questions in the packet too, where you can just circle the question or circle your answer, and then we will collect them at the end too, so that way we can record your data. So you hover over it with your camera, open your camera, hover over it, and it should say, it should be starting soon. Again, if you need any help, you can go ahead and raise your hand.
You can only get one choice.
Yes.
One choice.
Yes.
If you have more choices, come to the BC stat table outside and we'll take that.
Other way.
Most valuable.
Yes, most valuable. Most valuable. Take a picture of it.
I can read the question out loud as well. What is the most valuable data or information you would like to see on a public map? We're going to go through about 4 questions that have to do with the community map, and then I'm going to hand it over to the county executive for the questions about your community.
Let's go with code enforcement, everyone.
Oh, with their environment, save the soil, save the plant.
Code enforcement.
All right. Strong feelings. I love it.
We'll give it about another 10 seconds for this question. on to the next question.
All right, we're going to switch to the next question.
Okay. So the next question.
All right, there you go. Question.
So one of the things that I did not mention about the map was that there are assets that we would also like to have on this map, where there are resources, our rec centers, our schools, our libraries, etc. So what I wanted, the purpose of this question is, what assets, buildings would you most like to see on a public map? And the options are education, schools, colleges, libraries, public safety, police stations, fire stations, recreation, community centers and parks, some social specific assets such as grocery stores, shopping centers, transportation, bus lines, train stations, or economic related assets such as job centers and career resource centers. And if anyone's having technical difficulties, there is a packet inside your folder which you can handwrite. The next question is, how would you use a public data map like this? Better understanding Baltimore County, research, informing your decision to buy or rent, understanding the needs of your community, distributing resources and support, or understanding what assets are available.
What is your rationale for only giving us one option?
The tool and the limitations of the tool. So if you do have other things that you would like to have, please, there's a table right outside these doors, and we'll take whatever information you have.
Okay,
Absolutely. And we'll add anything. Yes.
I'm quite interested in this particular topic, so I know what you look like.
Thank you. Okay. And the last question. Oh, sorry. Oh, wait. No, go ahead. Take your time. Are you familiar with the Census Bureau Geographic Census Tract? And the reason why we're asking this is because the map is based on census tracts, so we want to know if that's valuable. Pretty much a census tract is a smaller zip code, I would say. Smaller is more localized than a zip code, so sometimes the census allows us to even go to the block level. So I know I just answered the question, so most of you should see this.
Were you familiar with the definition?
So for those that want to put number 2 and number 3, if you just want to handwrite it on the sheet, this gentleman did it that way, and that's been helpful. And then you can turn it in at the table, and we'll have it all collected.
Could you repeat that, please?
Yes. So, I'm sorry. Yes. So, in your packet is the sheet with the QR code, and you can rank after you've done the live polling. If you want to just rank on paper, this is a super old-fashioned way. And then there will be a table. Ian, you want to stand up? Ian Lazarenko, one of our VC stat analysts, will be standing at a table right outside the doors and collect your sheets. So number 2, number 3, that will help us a lot. Thank you.
So I'm going to hand it over to the county executive for the other question.
Okay, now the real fun begins.
All right.
So, that's great. So this is meant to build on what we've been doing to date with the town halls. I hope that you find this useful. We certainly will be taking this data back with us. So the first question I'd like to do a live poll on is, what's the most important investment you believe we make in Baltimore County government? Now I know this is hard because you have to pick one. I think we said we'll find ways if you want to do additional ones. But we really want to try to get like what really is the most important thing to you and from your perspective. I feel like you can almost have like a horse race, you know, music in the background.
Education.
We recognize these are all important, which is why we do all of them, but sure.
How many active members are part of your community association?
You're jumping ahead on me. We'll get to it. You're good. All right, last call? All right, looks like a close tie between public safety and education's got it edged out by about 10% with parks, roads and infrastructure, and community development. Okay, let's move on to the next question. What is the first place you go to when you need access to resources from Baltimore County government? So how do you learn, how do you access resources from the county government? Mandy Remmel. We should have added you as an option. We know better next time, Mandy.
Really what I do. I call it. How do I do click there? What's that? Some of these fit.
So as you're doing that, I'm curious, and if anybody wants to get up and even sort of share your thoughts as we're going through these two, it looks like that the website is sort of the overwhelming place. Is that where you want to get the information from?
No, that's where we'd like to get the.
It's where you want to get, yeah.
I hate to say it, but it's the clunkiest, most awful website.
You don't have to hate to say it, that's why we're here. Let's get you a microphone so everyone else can hear it too. Oh, we'll get Mandy start running around and we'll get you over here. So this is where you currently go.
It was just a silly comment, but I'm guessing that's why it still says beta at the top, because you're still practicing on that website.
So what we learned, and I can defer to our comms team if you want some information on it, is that there was a lot of just stuff that's been dumped there over the years and decades, and I think we're trying to clean it up and make it so that when you go to it, the top items are actually the things that you need. But if there's feedback about how we can make it better, we certainly want to make the website better, especially given some of this feedback.
So, if most people, if they cannot find what they're looking for, like within 1 minute, they're done looking. And that can, and that's what's frustrating about the website, because you know, some of us don't have the luxury of that, like we really need whatever it is that we need. And so you're spending valuable time just trying to find the resource, and then when you find it, sometimes all you get is a name and a phone number and not what you're actually looking for. So if it were more streamlined, so that you can have those topics, like the way this presentation is streamlined and you know where to click, that would be really, really great.
Okay, that's helpful. You got some over here.
Yep.
Hello.
Hi.
I might be my age, but I personally would like to be able to go to the agency directly by telephone and speak to someone who knew what they were talking about.
Have you tried 311 yet?
I never heard of 311.
Oh, okay. Well, we learned something new today. That's good. That's great. So I'd encourage you, if you need something for an agency, that's 311 is meant to be the filter. So if it's a very basic question, they've been trained to answer that. And if it's a more complex question, they triage that with the agencies so that you can have a direct representative from an agency for a more comprehensive, complex question. So 311, yes ma'am.
What I'm seeing is people will either try the website and have a really short tolerance for it, and then what they'll immediately do is post out to the community network, whether it be the leader itself or the community at large, the social network in place. And when that doesn't work, where it gets too confrontational, then they'll go to the county council and say, help.
We're going to try to get to as many people as we can.
I just moved to the county from the city after 40-something years as a city resident. And one is 311 is the greatest thing ever. So once it really gets in swing, everybody should use it. I have started trying, because we're reinvigorating our association, using the website. It's really confusing. And I ended up calling my daughter-in-law to try and figure out how to get a room for the library instead of trying the website. So that's just my comments. But 311 is great.
Yeah, and on things like CCBC, BCPL, and BCPS, they are technically independent partner state agencies. So, but anything for Baltimore County Services, we certainly want to do that. Maybe one takeaway here is we can set up an ad hoc. If those of you who want to sort of be part of a feedback committee, particularly for the website, we'd be happy to maybe set up a facilitated conversation about how we can really make those improvements. So that's a good takeaway from today.
Hi, everybody knows that the best...
And also, I'm sorry to do this earlier, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody else if you guys are making comments today.
Hi, my name is Shirley Stupik. I'm the president of the Liberty Road Community Council. I've been doing that for 13 years. And I wasn't always technologically competent, yes. So in the beginning, my idea was always you go right to the source, and I went right to the department. And I would suggest to those that aren't technologically competent, it would be really nice if Baltimore County would make a book that listed all the phone numbers for people like this lady who would like to call and speak to them directly.
Telephone directly, Cheryl, telephone directly.
Okay. Last one, Zach. Last one for this one. Yes, sir.
I've used my neighborhood, and if that could be incorporated into what you're building now, that would help.
Sure. Sir, do you want to introduce yourself to everybody?
Dave Couchbound and Northern Beach.
Thanks, Dave. We're going to have an open forum too, just don't worry. I want to make sure that you guys have time to sort of, I'm going to have an open discussion on issues after this too, so there'll be plenty of time. Top concern you'd like the county to address in your community? And I think this, as you voted on this one, this sort of speaks to what Momin was talking about with these community maps, is that we recognize that not every community is going to have the same top concern, that one issue in your community may be very different than what other communities facing, although there seems to be some consensus here. For those who have voted, do you want to talk a little bit more about your particular, why you voted the way you did?
Hi, I'm Mitch Shorrock with Wakefield Community Association. I think if you put roads up there, that would be much higher than any of them.
Okay.
Hi, good morning. My name is Ellis Collins. I'm president of the Wilkins Police Community Relations Organization and the Hilltop Civic League. And in my community, we have a clean and green committee. We pull down those illegal, ugly signs that's in our community
Yes, sir.
that is stacked up every weekend. Myself and this gentleman here, right, were called. And this is one of the reasons why we voted for code enforcement, because if you drive into a community and there's 20 or 30 signs hanging on a pole or it's tattered, and you're selling property in your community, nobody wants to buy real estate in your neighborhood. And this reflects the county because there's no taxes to be collected on that property. And eventually, some folk who may not be as rational as we are will begin to do bad things in that property. And you know what I'm talking about. So this is why code enforcement is important to us in our community and helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Denise Camp, Liberty Road Community Association. Shout out to Ms. Shirley Stupik. I'm going to nominate you as a community hero next year. And you have helped educate me, and you're the reason I'm here. Thank you very much. Thank you to the data people. I'm all about the data as an engineer. I'm about the litter, trash, and code enforcement because pretty much all those other things fall into that. If you got the litter, trash, the code enforcement, you don't do it what this gentleman says, you're gonna have crime problems. If you have abandoned housing, you're gonna get more litter, etc. You got the code enforcement, etc. Substance use, you know where we're using. Homelessness, you see it. And we park, we can pay for parking. Come on. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. So he might regret this, but our newest chief of code enforcement is actually in the room. So Mr. Adam Whitlock, if you want to wave your hand to everybody. The man of the hour. Adam is really, I actually want to commend him. He's really trying to bring some progressive code enforcement strategies. He's really embraced the data that Momin talked about earlier. And he has a team that really wants to be responsive to your needs. So if you haven't, particularly if that is your top issue, please make sure you introduce yourself to Adam if you don't already know him. He's really leading incredible work, and he's partnering with departments like our housing, DHCD, our housing and community development, as we're sort of building out our vacant registries and really sort of going in to do more than just code enforcement. So Adam, if you just want to say hi to everybody.
Yep, and I just wanted to say that later on this afternoon we'll have some workshops for code enforcement. So if you have some suggestions and questions and whatnot, either feel free to stop and see me at the table or come up to the workshop.
Thank you. One more on this question, sir, then the next one.
Sure. I work for you, Mandy.
Good morning, my name is Shirley Gregory, and I'm the president of the St. Helena Community Association located in Gunvale, Maryland. Thank you, Johnny. Known him a very long time, and I think he's doing a wonderful job. One of the major problems St. Helena has is not litter as per se as much as it is dumping. And not just furniture, but it's tires, and now it's cars. We're having abandoned vehicles dumped on our streets because the people can't fix them. They take the serial numbers off, and then we have to have them removed, and it's costing you guys money. And we even know who some of the people are, but nobody will work with us to get some of the vehicles removed and charge them for the towing of the vehicles.
Sounds like a good conversation for the workshop that's coming up with code. As a former resident of St. Helena, I know another challenge for some communities like St. Helena is that also some of the city-county line and border communities, there's a lot of back and forth about particularly issues that happen near the city-county line about who's responsible. People will move their junk, trash, and debris, etc. But I think we can look into, in addition to the bulk trash for individuals, like how are we responding to these larger dumping issues throughout Baltimore County?
And then the last thing I wanted to say was, I know that when you're having your elections, people are always putting out their signs, hey, vote for me, vote for me. But then when they don't get elected, you know, they don't take any of their signs down. And it's against the law anyway, but it's not enforced. And I think there should be something stated where if, like, somebody was running against you and they didn't get elected, just using you.
I'm going to take my signs down, too,
That person should get a fine, like a $50 fine, because their signs are still up. And make them pay for not removing their signs instead of us removing them.
Yeah. Thank you, Shirley, I appreciate it. We're going to move on to the next question, which is how do you, I guess, primarily engage?
Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
I have one.
Go ahead.
One issue that's not being addressed, and which is unbearable in our area, is noise. The noise, I mean, 24 hours a day, these cars with it, they go pop, 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 pop. And they're driving all hours of the day and night. And then they're speeding through the area. They're driving so fast that it sounds like a missile is coming through. And I'm like a block or two away from them. And how the people on Glen can stand it, I don't know. Because around the corner on Glen Oak, that's where they roar down from the city and roar on down, and then they turn on Glenvale, which is around my area, and they're making all this, I mean, every new car they buy is like a roaring, it's a roaring noise, and it's waking you up all hours of the night, and I'm really tired of it. Isn't there something we can do about this noise and the speeding?
I believe there's an answer to every challenge that's out there, and so, I don't know, do we have, I saw Colonel Conger earlier, I don't know if the chief is here, but Colonel, do you want to speak a little bit, and then I don't know if you have a session today, if not, maybe we can sort of convene again. Part of all of this, I mean, as many conversations, I think we should get through the workshops that are already planned today to sort of see what solutions come out, but if there's an issue outstanding, again, this is our first time doing this, but whether it's the website or noise and racing, like we're happy to convene additional conversations to try to find solutions. And this is what these conversations are all about.
Yes, I'm Joe Conger from the police department, and I'm sorry, ma'am, I didn't catch your name, but I will make my way over there when we reach the break so we can talk about that. Certainly, traffic safety is one of the key things the police department has to focus on. We obviously handle crime, but we do our best to be everything to everyone. So I'll be happy to have that problem addressed.
The police department does have a workshop today.
Yeah, great. All right, how do you primarily engage with your community members? Looks like email and social are the top two. Oh, does anyone want to comment in terms of how you like interactions with your members, ma'am?
Community Association, we have a regular meeting of all of our members, and that's for the older associations in the county. I suspect that's an important method of communication. Plus, we have a monthly newsletter that goes to 1,500 residents, and we've been doing that for 35 years. And those are the two ways that we primarily engage with our community.
So you certainly add the in-person gatherings with your membership. Yeah, back here. And relatedly, if there's anything the county can or should be thinking about supporting your engagement, it may not be. We're just sort of curious how you talk to your folks.
One issue is that I know our community association has problems finding locations where to have meetings. If you go to the library, you have to pay a charge, and there are not a lot of places available. I know they have the senior centers, but they're closed in the evenings, and they need to be available in the evenings when people are having their community associations, because there are not enough places for community associations to have free meetings for their associations. It's a cost.
Thank you. And we're happy to work with any of you who are in need of gathering places to try to identify locations, whether it's us or our partners in the library, school systems, etc.
Hi, I'm Dave Patron, president of the North Point Civic Association, and we go through meetings and emails. But what I'd like to see is the county could put a community sign so we can put stuff out on the board where everybody who's do the internet or read the emails can see it as they come into a neighborhood and explain what's going on or what's going to happen. Thank you. Great.
Good feedback. Thank you. We've got quite a few other questions we're going to try to keep rolling through, and anything we don't catch as part of the question, I'm going to try to make sure there's some time before lunch and anything you want to sort of add or ask. How many active members are a part of your association? I think we're just trying to get a sense of, yeah.
All right, thank you, Engineer Cambry.
Yeah, I think we're just staggering it up to 100, and then if it's more than 100. I think this is just helpful. This is honestly just helpful information for us to get a sense. Oops.
I'm sorry.
Andy, guys, there we go. Is this still, can folks still vote, or is it still live? There we go. Yeah, this is just helpful mostly for us to get a sense of the size and scope of the number of members who are active with your relative associations. So I think we're going like 1 to 10, 11 to 25, 26 to 49, 50 to, yeah, we're up. We'll give it just another second or two. I think this one's pretty straightforward. Interesting to see the distribution of it. Okay?
All right, excellent.
Our next question. Oh. Yes. Sure. In terms of how many individuals you run. Yeah, no, that's a good point. I don't think we have a way to capture that today. Again, this is new technology, but that's certainly helpful feedback. Yeah, you can have a large percentage of participation if you're a small organization, but that was just sort of sheer numbers. Yes, ma'am. Has the pandemic changed the way you interact with community members? We still meet in person. We meet virtually. Is there a hybrid? Okay, we're missing both, so. I will be transparent, because that's what we're all about. I did not write the questions or the answers here, so. And I think this is the first time we've actually tried to use this technology in a meeting, so I also would love to have your feedback in terms of if we do town halls, et cetera, if this is helpful to have sort of everyone has a chance to participate that way, even if folks can't speak or don't have an opportunity to. So. Okay. Would you like to see Baltimore County, what would you like to see Baltimore County add in your community? Again, we're sure all these could be answers. I'm sure we're missing some things that could also be added, but if you had to pick one, what do we need more of? Green space and bike trails, road infrastructure. The roads are there on this one. Parks and playgrounds, school upgrades, more affordable housing, A&E venues. And if you voted and you want to weigh in as to why, this would be a good one if you want to sort of speak to maybe even how it relates to your community in particular, or the county generally.
Sir, we have one here.
Okay, great.
Hey, Johnny, how's it going? The reason why I went with the yes, my name is Matthew Reisner. I'm with the Ingleside Neighborhood Association in Catonsville. We've been around for about a decade now, and Johnny has seen me on various occasions. The reason why I went with roads and infrastructure is because, in many ways, we have a serious lack. We have our roads are dangerous. We just have way too much traffic that's being funneled down streets that were never designed for the traffic flow that they have. And on top of it, we have side streets, for example, that haven't been repainted in like 40 years. So, this is becoming an issue. And, I understand the county is invested in schools and other things, but at some point we have to go to the bare basics of our regional infrastructure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think there was actually a session on Paver, which is our new scoring system. We're actually in the process of having a sense of how our roads are all rated across the county, something we've never done before, which will help us, I think, drive a lot of that infrastructure investment, particularly around the roadways. I'm not speaking out of school, am I, Mandy? We do have that session. Yes? Thumbs up? Director?
Yes.
Director Walker here today, or Deputy Director Buckler? Director Deandra Walker from the Department of Public Works and Transportation, so she'll be talking to you all later today, but Deandra, if you want to just talk a bit about.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you all for coming out this morning and today to spend time with us. We do have a session on highways today. So if you stop by, I'll be jumping. We have 3 sessions for Department of Public Works and Transportation, but one is on highways, and we will talk about the roads and how we rate our roads.
Thank you. Others on this one?
Barbara Waters. I'm kind of between the green space bike trails and the road and infrastructure. I don't drive, I walk. I've walked like 5,500 miles since the pandemic started. And there are, so much of Towson has no sidewalks. So it's dangerous. And there are times that I'm like, okay, I want to go this street, but I know I can't go because there are no sidewalks and this is a busy time of day. So I would love to see more sidewalks.
We, I don't know if that's part of the plan, but we actually have a connectivity program that we started in this year's budget where we are also rating and scoring the needs for walkability throughout our neighborhoods to prioritize projects. Have you tried riding the Towson Loop yet?
Oh yeah, I ride that quite a lot.
Oh, good. We're hoping, so the first ever fixed route transit service in Baltimore County is the Loop. It started in Towson. We're hoping to replicate it in communities throughout Baltimore County in the years ahead also.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Stiles. I'm president of the Southern Rockdale Community Association, and I have 3 issues I'd like to bring attention to. One is paving the streets. I think that more attention needs to be given to the streets.
Speak up.
I think more attention needs to be given to the streets because they are our neighborhoods. We travel down them every day, and it's just horrific just to see how some neighborhoods you go into, the streets are really nice, the roads are very nice. Others, it's just like potholes everywhere. And so that, to me, is annoying for our community. We are, like I said, Southern Rockdale Community Association, and I've made a complaint about Civic really before, and apparently it went ignored. The other concern is speeding. Speeding on Liberty Road is been a few years ago, we had officers that were stationed out there. I know there's a lot going on in our communities and far exceeds speeding. But look at the deaths that are occurring, and they're increasing from people speeding up and down Liberty Road, which is a major thoroughfare, and I just believe that more attention needs to be given to Liberty Road. In my neighborhood, Civic, there's stop signs on both ends. People just go right on through, and I watch this every day. And it seems like there's a total disregard for traffic safety, apparently. I think that more attention needs to be given to that to see how we can correct that. And third, living on Liberty Road near the Beltway. That's a major thoroughfare leading to Randallstown, Ricestown, and beyond, Carroll County. And I think that when people come into the city or into the county, that should be a showpiece. Our roads and the greenery on the roads should look real nice instead of a lot of trash all the time. And I've noticed it's like a lot of times during the weekends, you'll see cans and trash all up and down those areas. I would think that, like here, I see that the roads, not roads, but the greenery is more cultivated than where we are, where it's just, everything's going wild. So I would like to see some attention given to our area, which is that 695 thoroughfare. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to, before we go to Ms. Mildred here, I want to give Director Steve Lafferty just a quick chance to talk on some of the Liberty Road work that we're doing. As I'm sure you're aware, part of our challenge is that it's a state road. So we are advocating and frankly working very closely with Speaker Adrian Jones, Maryland's House Speaker and Baltimore County Delegate, to make sure bringing back the resources for Liberty, but we do rely on the state highway administration for a lot of the actual implementation efforts.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. County Executive. Good morning, everybody, and thank you very, very much for being here. It's a terrific and impressive turnout. As many of you know, in the Liberty Road Corridor, there is a Northwest Gateway Steering Committee that's been working to implement the Northwest Gateway Sustainable Community Plan. Gane Jope is leading that effort from our office. And the first is really trash cans. It's very clear from what we've heard from the community that trash and debris has to be picked up more frequently. But we also know that there's a challenge in just by adding more cans, you need to make sure people empty the cans. And so that's an operational issue that we're discussing with DeAndrea Walker and Public Works so that we can make sure that we get more cans in more locations. We're also working then on other improvements along and including maintenance and replacing trees, benches, other things, because the first start is really the maintenance effort. And to the county executive's point, it's often very challenging working with state highway administration. But I do give Director Walker a lot of credit for trying to push them harder to make sure they're responsive to the work we're doing. Further up in Randallstown, we are also looking at initiating working with to create a new nonprofit opportunity to actually work with the communities and the businesses to continue to strengthen the Randallstown community. But we're looking at the entire corridor, and as the executive also said, Speaker Jones has been very, very helpful in helping us to identify where we should be targeting some additional resources. Thank you, Mr. County Executive.
Thank you, sir. One more on this one, then we're gonna open up what kind of open space was a part of. So if you want to start voting on what kind of open space your community knows, go there.
Thank you. My name is Mildred Owens. I'm the Liberty Manor Community Association president. My question was regarding the infrastructure. I'm wondering, was the sidewalks included? And I think I heard someone comment on it. But in our community of Liberty Manor Community Association area, can you hear me? There we go. Okay. I was speaking around about the infrastructure. I didn't know if it covered the sidewalks, but we definitely need sidewalks for over 40 years. They have the sidewalks for the people with disabilities. They have to go to the street. They can, I mean, you go two sidewalks almost in some areas, and in majority of the areas. You go around 2 sidewalks in your wheelchair or whatever you're assisting to try to get around in the community. You have to go in the street. Because if you go 2 steps, your chair is on the ground. So we really need something. They started it when County Executive Kevin Cabinet was here. They started it, and in the winter time, they stopped and said they were coming back. But after he passed, we haven't had anything done, and nobody hardly even uses the sidewalks. They're all in the roads. So, and along with one other thing is, I hear you mentioning the problem with the trash. I have a suggestion. I don't know whether that can be considered or not, but is there something wrong with having everyone, like a budget, that goes in and clean up all of the community shopping areas and whatnot? So that way, everybody is getting the same treatment. You don't have to worry about it. People are getting paid to do this on a budget, and that should be something considered. Because going out every year, what you doing all the other time? You know, I mean, that's great, but it's one time out of a year you go out and everybody picking up trash and everything. You shouldn't have to do that.
We don't want to discourage all of you from the great cleanups that you do, but that does sound sound like a great town hall as we come up on our next budget cycle. That might be something, there's more that we can do to sort of combat trash and litter, whether it's along our roadways or in our communities. I think we can certainly make that part of the next budget cycle's consideration. And as I mentioned earlier, we are investing in connectivity and sidewalks pretty significantly. Maybe as a follow-up, we can share that information with all of you, both the investments that are currently in the budget for sidewalks and connectivity, but also to give some additional information about this new connectivity program that we're starting in this year's budget.
Sir, one more question. Sorry.
Hi. I am Nancy Goldring from the Northeast Towson Improvement Association, Historic East Towson, and I'm looking at this and I'm saying, bike trail, do I put bike trail? Is that going to include pedestrian trail? Is that going to include sanctuary space? The last question I chose green space because I figured if the green space gets handled, then all those other things were sort of a trickle down thing, but I feel that in an environment where the data is being crunched, but the option is not available, do I take the risk of answering, and then somebody crunches the data and says, well, they didn't mention that, or she says playgrounds, but they have a playground, but there's no sanctuary space offered there, and there's no pedestrian trail offered there. And as you well know, we're working on the Road to Freedom Trail. So how do I answer without getting stuck with something I really don't?
Sure. There's no magic sauce to this. We are capturing the data, but I've already heard plenty today that this is not a precise or a perfect collection, right? This is the first time we've done it, but the points are, Nancy and others, the points are well taken, that we understand that there's some granularity, some options potentially missing. Folks might want to vote for more than one of these things too, so we understand that all of that is true. So, we will take all of the feedback today with some grain of salt and not make it an absolute sort of sketch of community preferences. And again, we recognize that all these things are important, including the things that aren't listed. All right, what are you most proud of in your community? I think we've got one or two more, then we'll go to completely opening it up.
Yes, you only have 2 more, sir.
Someone want to talk about a source of pride in their community? There we go, I see some hands, I love that.
Hi, I'm Kim Tucker from the Gunpowder Valley Conservancy, and I just wanted to say that there's so many great efforts that you have as part of the workshops a little bit later regarding the environment, but connected to what the woman before me was talking about. You know, we have this beautiful green space that is present in Baltimore County, and I just want to see that preserved and restored as much as possible, but also balancing that with human use, of course. So that's what I'm most proud of in Baltimore County.
Thank you. It's probably a good time to mention, I don't know if Director Rosalind Johnson is inside or outside. There she is. I've actually tasked Roz and her department to partner with Baltimore City on the green space and connectivity. We are actually in the process of trying to build out an entire network analysis of, and not just because we're interconnected, right? So like, what are all of the green spaces? What are all of the trails and connected issues? So we both see what's available and can share that, but also see where the deficiencies are so that we can sort of fill the gaps. I don't know, Rosalind, to add anything about that or open space generally.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. We are celebrating our 200th acre that the county executive has purchased for everyone in here and every resident and visitor in Baltimore County. 200 acres. That's huge. We've met with the county executive. He's moved red tape out of the way. We've met with him weekly initially, and I think now we're doing bi-weekly or every 3 weeks. These have been key purchases through our program Open Space to purchase additional land. So 200 acres might not seem huge, but these are key assets for everyone to be able to use, and it speaks to connectivity. For the first time that any of my team can remember, we're actually partnering with Baltimore City to have connectivity. They're our neighbors, and we don't really talk to them as much as we should to make sure you can go in and out and have equal access and really maximize the dollars between the two jurisdictions. We're also planning our master plan process for Oregon Ridge, speaking to preserving our parklands, and we're listening to everyone. Oregon Ridge is not for the people who live within 2 minutes of Oregon Ridge. It's for everyone in the county. So we want to hear from all of you all. So at our table back outside, we have information about our upcoming meeting, but we really want to hear from you because you're our partners. You use it. We had a 224% increase in park usership during the thing that the county executive said we weren't really going to mention, but I think everyone understands the importance of parkland and actually having a space to really go out and increase your health and partner and walk and do all sorts of amazing things. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Molinaro from the Reisterstown area. I work locally with my Chartley community and also with the Main Street area. And I just wanted to say I'm most proud always, I say, of our volunteers. Our Reisterstownians come out whenever we ask them to help us on projects and to help our monthly cleanups that you're talking about. And they've just been there for years and have been great.
Other sources of pride.
We have a couple of questions on this side if you have time.
Good morning, hi Johnny. My name is Joan Bryan. I'm with the Glenvale Civic Association. We are really proud of the park that's situated behind our community. The problem we have is getting rid of dead trees. We seem to be caught between BGE and Brecken Park. Oh, is that better? There you go. I don't know how much you heard, but anyway.
Dead trees.
Okay.
We're not proud of our park, but.
Yes. There you go. And so we're caught between BGE and, as I said, Brecken Parks. I've talked to folks at Brecken Parks. They're really nice, but nothing happens. And we're afraid that the trees during a hurricane or whatever may fall and take down the utility poles, but that doesn't seem to move BG&E either. So
Fortunately enough, BG&E is here today. At the table. So what I will do is we'll make sure that OCE connects you and BGE and Brecken Parks, and I also we'll also throw DEPS in the mix, our Department of Environmental Protection and Sustainability. Prior to this year's budget, we actually had one forestry division in Baltimore County. And again, like I said, we're larger than several states. We had one forestry division of about 3 or 4 people that were responsible for reforestation. They were responsible for all the urban work and all the rural work. We now have 3 divisions in Baltimore County, one for urban, one for rural, and one for reforestation. So we're going to make sure we get that taken care of today. Ms. Jones, it's good to see you. Another point of pride? As we're doing that, sorry, go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Alex Mccain. I'm with the Security Woodlawn Business Association, and I want to salute you for all the work that you're doing in the area. The mall is bouncing back. They're building a restaurant over there, and I've seen you over there actually picking up trash. So I just want to salute you and really everybody in this room coming together, because together we win. And I see changes in our community, but there's a lot of hard work. So keep up the great work. Security Woodlawn Business Association, we're proud of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Amen. Let's move over to what infrastructure does your community need to increase connectivity between residents, jobs, schools, services? And again, we know that there are probably things missing, maybe multiple votes, etc. Usual caveats apply. But if anyone wants to speak to connectivity here.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Davis. I represent the Overlea Community Association, and we live, we take the county side of Bel Air Road. We currently, I think like a couple of folks in here, do not have ADA compliant sidewalks. We recognize that there is a issue with Bel Air Road being a state road in a county, but unfortunately we're really struggling with keeping businesses open in our corridor just because of the lack of sidewalks and any sort of community availability there. So yeah, we would definitely need, sidewalks are a huge initiative for us. We, like somebody said earlier, we have individuals in our community that are in wheelchairs that have to go on Bel Air Road, which speeding is also an issue there. So folks drive, 60 miles an hour up and down, and it provides a huge safety issue.
Sidewalks seem to be a pretty consistent, strong takeaway. I think DeAndrea Walker is shaking her head. She's like, yes, when it comes to budget time, just remember to fund me, Mr. County Executive. We can continue this build out.
So my name is Annette Caranja, and I am from the Illumin Community Center in Mill River, Maryland. And we had partnered with a group called Every Thrive We Do a food drive. And what's interesting that I have been able to witness through this project is that people will come with their carts, so it's sidewalks, but people will come with their dollies and they're walking and there are parts where we don't have sidewalks, and you're seeing these individuals come with these to get their produce. And so that's an issue. Another thing too that's really disheartening to see in the Middle River area is families. You have a lot of growing families. We also have multi-generational housing happening, and so you have young individuals who are walking with their strollers and they don't have sidewalks. Super dangerous, and you see it all the time. There might be some near the schoolhouses, but then the further you branch out, we have less structure that is consistent and also safe for them. I'd also like to see something that I've seen in the city, which is projects where we can have, hand out reflectors for them for when they're walking at night. Make sure that there is some sort of information given out on how they can protect themselves, because I know people are willing, they just don't have access to the resources or know how to do this.
Thank you for that. And maybe even find ways to sort of get those resources to community partners, providers like you, so that as you're serving them with food, et cetera, you can also give those other resources like reflectors, et cetera.
I'm Kathy Jeppy. I'm president of the North County Community Group, and I represent northwestern Baltimore County. I can't believe there isn't an option on connectivity for broadband. I just had to say that.
Well, Kathy, thank you for joining us recently on some of the good work that we're doing on broadband, though, right? Again, transparency. I didn't write the questions, I didn't write the answers. But I hear you.
I have a question that maybe this isn't the proper venue, but I listen to this data-driven economy, and I'm wondering how the needs of the rural community will be addressed in that environment.
So, actually, I don't know if Moment is still here, but I will say that's the whole point of data, is that no community is left behind when you look at the data. And that's why we have been so intentional, and I want to thank you for your passionate advocacy for things like broadband build-out, that we've now had 2 separate grants with Comcast and the state, where we've invested $15, $20 million towards that build-out. I mean, it's essential. The data will show us not only that the connectivity is a key piece of it, but also, so like, we sort of track and measure that, but then also affordability, because you can be connected, but if you can't afford it, it doesn't matter too. So both things have to be part of the conversation as we're looking at those issues. But I can tell you that our rural parts of the county are not being forgotten. We just announced the purchase of land for a northern Baltimore County Senior Center. It's the only place in Baltimore County that doesn't have its own dedicated. I mean, Hereford Senior Center had to share a second floor with a volunteer fire department, for people who aren't familiar with that. But also we recognize that in Woodlawn, right? That senior center was completely inadequate to its size, so we're doing a significant expansion there. But we have an ag specialist for the first time in the county coming in to work specifically with those issues. We have an ag council as part of our economic development advisory group. If there are other thoughts about how to make sure we're not leaving them behind, but I think data is an important part of ensuring that that's the case. So I don't know if Moment wants to add to that, but we can circle back as well.
Hello, my name is Josana Babrios. I am the co-chair of Latino Racial Justice Circle. One concern I have is transportation to the Baltimore County the headquarters for the school system. It's on Charles Street, and even though you have the circulator, it does not go past there. There's no public transportation past there. So even though there's public meetings, if people don't have a car, they don't have access to the public meeting. There's also a school across the street from there, a public school. I have seen people that work there walk. There's no sidewalks there either. And I don't know if you remember several years ago, somebody got killed because they were working there. And then there was also a cyclist that got hurt, or a runner, I think. He was a doctor at GBMC. So I think sidewalks there should really be considered, or adding public transportation to the area.
Thank you. And it's not just a public safety imperative. We also recognize that places like in Pikesville, we're really trying to be deliberate about building out sidewalks there too, because there's an Orthodox community that really deserves, when they're walking to shul and trying to provide, opportunities to safely get to and from services. There's a cultural imperative to some of this work too, in addition to the safety, that we're actually being mindful of the diverse populations we have across Baltimore County.
Hi, I'm Pastor Alyssa Kaplan. I serve as pastor at Colgate Community Ministry at St. Peter, and I'm involved in the Colgate Improvement Association. A real asset of our community is the amazing diversity that exists, and that is also a challenge when it comes to connectivity with regards to language access. So we've got a ton of young families that have moved into our neighborhood who want to be more connected, feel more empowered in talking at their school or at the rec center, or involved in the ministry that happens out of my congregation, and with code enforcement too. And there's just such a disconnect around getting them to meetings and having all of this information adequately translated and provided for folks whose first language is not English.
I just scooped back Giuliana Valencia, who's our Immigrant Affairs Outreach Lead. She's been an amazing addition to Baltimore County, and you're absolutely right. We appreciate the work that you're leading. We recognize that we have more work to do, but I wanted to give Juliana a chance to talk about some language access work that she's helping lead here in Baltimore County.
Thank you, Pastor Kaplan. Again, good morning, everyone. My name is Giuliana Valencia. I have the privilege of serving Baltimore County's more than 106,000 immigrants and refugees that have chosen our county as home. One of the initiatives that I am working on is language access, working with our different departments, ensuring that they're not only aware of what language access is, but informing them of their best practices. Unfortunately, this is going to be slow work. However, I am very thankful that our different department chairs and chiefs have been very receptive of the work. So with our Immigration Affairs Fellow, we continue to make progress on our county-wide language access. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next question. Last question, and then we can open it up to anything your heart's desire before we get to lunch. Nothing like an elected official standing between you and food, right? What organizational tools could your community most benefit from? How can we help you most in terms of next steps for your organization?
Hi, my name is Janet Silverman. I'm president of Seven Slade Incorporated in Pikesville. We're a condo building of 167 condos. Our building's 52 years old. The age of our residents are 70s, 80s, and 90s. Unfortunately for us, we did not know the county council passed a rule about sprinklers. For years, we've had waivers. Now we have till 2033 to put in a sprinkler system that's going to cost between $5 and $7 million. I don't know where the people are going to get the money from, and we need to know where we can get grants or funding for that. Thank you.
Absolutely, we are happy to work with you to find resources to help support that work. I believe that that's coming down not just from a county law, but I think it's consistent with what the state's requiring as well.
We're 1, 7, and 11, so there's 3 high-rise.
Yes, ma'am. We look forward. We'll try to find some resources to help.
Hi, my name is Carmen Zuniga. I represent Bellona Giddings Community Association, one of the ones that have Baltimore County and Baltimore City.
And I have to talk, I am a realtor and I drive around all these places and I understand perfectly whatever you are talking. And how you can help us, they came to fix our street and they broke my fence. And I called and nobody answered. And then BGE went to the back of my driveway and said, we can use your driveway to pull all the trees from 6 houses. I said, yes, of course. But then when I came back, I was looking all the stones on my driveway, on the street. And after 1 year, they called me that I don't have time to do this. Really, that's not my job. And they told me I can give you two bags. I said, really? All my driveway that is a long one. And then they were big trucks doing that gas line, and my car went, because everything is frequency, my car, I went to have a lunch, and the car was with a big scratch on my window. And you know that things happen, and I have to take care of all those expenses, and I think that's not fair, but I understand that BG is here, but they didn't want to do anything with me, and that's not my job. Thank you.
Just a quick question, on the road, was that also BGE work or was that Baltimore County work? BGE. BGE used to be popular today. We'll make sure we connect you, and if we can get it done, we will. So thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Dave Patron again, President of the North Warren Village Civic Association. And I found a tool that would help us is on rental properties. If we could get a list of all the owners who own all these vacant houses, you never find their phone number. It would help our community and all other communities, because what's happening is you have a nuisance law of 2010 that you have to use. You have to find out who owns it. It's the police department. You got a lot of drugs in the neighborhood that we get rid of. So it'd be nice to have a big list of all their phone numbers of the owners who actually have rental properties in the area. So I can just call directly to them and I don't have to bug the county every 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. We do have folks who actually run around registry, but I don't know if is Terry Hickey here or someone from DHCD to talk about. No. Okay. We're going to follow up. Stay tuned for the vacant and housing registry issue. It's one of the issues that we're actively working on. That's part of what the data-driven work helped us sort of see as an issue that we can really tackle.
So my name is Michelle. I'm from the Student Support Network, and I work at Ellis Collins High School in the Nest. Sometimes the issue is not obtaining the grant, it's being able to spend that money. There are so many hoops to jump through that we're struggling to move forward after being given a grant months ago, because we can't get the help to figure out how to spend that money.
Let Elizabeth talk about the grants a little bit.
Yeah. So one of the other things that we've done in the last 4 years is to start building out our grant making and our grant seeking process. We have an office now of 2 people. I know that some of your organizations have applied for funding that we've received by virtue of the COVID pandemic, but there are other funding streams that we can help you access. If you are having trouble spending down money, please reach out to us, because there are ways that we may be able to assist. Having said that, a lot of these funding streams that we help push out have rules, and a lot of times the rules have to do with time frames and reporting, and there's really nothing we can do about changing those rules, but we could possibly help you honor them. So I'll connect with you later and appreciate the comment. I did want to take one moment to say that the Department of Aging's table has a resource guide. Someone asked about a resource guide, and they have a packet. It's Baltimore City and Baltimore County combined, but on page 11, there are all the Baltimore County government services, and there's a lot of other information about Baltimore County services in here, so I had to put that in the mix.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Barb Lewis. I am the president of Grizzly Community Association. A lot of people might not know what it is. They usually call it the Oaks. And we could really use a lot of information on the grants and the funds, because my association and with me being president, it's like we have 1,100 homes. Okay. 1,100 homes and some funds and grants that can help us out in that community. would really be appreciated. And I'd like a lot of information on how to go about, I guess, filling out paperwork for
Sure,
it.
we can do that. And honestly, this feedback is helpful because it does seem like there's a sincere interest for having more support around grant, whether it's applying for, implementing grants, and so we really appreciate the feedback and conversation. I'm gonna let us wrap, this is the last one. We do have a little bit of time before lunch is technically scheduled, so if you have a question for me or for county government, I think we have a lot of our agencies and departments here, not all, so some questions may need to be a follow-up, but anything that you want to put on the table while we're sort of in a general session here, before we start going to breakouts for the benefit of the group, we'll open it up for questions and comments for the next 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll transition to lunch if that works for everybody.
My name is Mildred Owens, and I'm with the Liberty Manor Community Association. I understand that BGE is in the house, and I really have some real situations that BGE left us with about 4 years ago that I'm dealing with right now. So I wanted to know if our roads were brand new when BGE came in. And when BGE left, our roads were deteriorated. We had a sinkhole in the street. There are many things like this going on, and right now, they came in and they did not discuss anything with us. They came in under one pretext and they left with another one. And we have these holes, we got sinkholes, we have streets where asphalt has been patches all across our streets, and our streets had just been revitalized, resurfaced all of our roads. And it really makes me want to cry when I think about what they did when they came in. And, but I want to know what can Baltimore County do to help us, because it took us 35 years. I was working for Vice President Gore, and 15 years later, we got it done. Then they came in and did this. They never talked to us. They came in and told us that they're going to keep us in the loop. And I would see them sneaking in our community to get something fixed so that they could say, well, oh, there's no problem. And this went on throughout four years almost. And right now, I want to know, you know, and when they say we're going to make you whole supposed to make you better looking than what you were before, not make you worse than you're off than what you were before they came in. So I just need to know what you're going to do now.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mildred. So I'll say a couple things. First, again, the BGE table is going to be very busy today. But beyond that, I don't know if there's actually a work group or a work session, but that's something we can certainly facilitate as a conversation for any of the community groups that might be interested. So maybe another follow-up might be sort of a smaller sort of meeting like this, just sort of around those issues. The last thing I'll say, what we are trying to do in Baltimore County is at least align the work. We're trying to be better about, okay, BGD, you want to come in and do a gas line or a replacement. Let's do it so that we're aligning our repavement schedule with yours, and then if they're not, holding them, with community members responsible for, holding up their end of the bargain if they're going in to tear up roads to do work to replace that in kind.
Hey, John. In a sense, I'm gonna be beating the dead horse, and with total respect, I know that a little while ago when we were talking about roads and infrastructure, there was like a rating system. So with respect to you, I want to turn this way. Please, please, please come to St. Helena and rate our streets. St. Helena.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Takima Dorsey. I actually sit on the Tourism Commission. I am the advisor for the NAACP Randallstown Youth Council, and my daughter is actually the president. And what I want to take the opportunity to is plant the seed, grow the concept, and elevate the idea. We talked about stakeholders and shareholders throughout this morning. We talked about data. We talked about education, unemployment, aging. The one thing that's missing, Mr. County Executive, and all of the leaders in the room, is the representation of our youth. Our youth are missing. Our youth are not the future leaders, they are our current leaders. When we talk about head of states, what I missed on that screen are youth leaders being represented at the table. How can we advocate for someone we don't hear from? So I'm gonna, in short 60 seconds, ask every person in this room, including our county executive, whether he's re-elected or not. When we're talking about youth and young adult, please take a moment to include a youth in your community on your council. Not just in the sense of figuration, but in the sense of training them to succeed you, not tomorrow, but in 5 years. Take the opportunity to go into your communities and bring them in to leadership and development opportunities so that they can see through modeling how it's done. It's not enough to have one youth representing all of the youth in our county on the Board of Education. We should have a youth on the county executive in every department that's represented from education on down. And I'm asking that when we talk about who they are and what they want, ask them, because they will tell you. If you're unsure how to do it, I represent the Youth Council, not just the NAACP. So if you're uncertain, ask. Because the youth want to come into rooms like this. Look around to your left, look to your right, look in front of you, and look behind you. Mr. County Executive, who's missing are our youth that want to learn, want to know, want to grow, and want to one day take your spot, like all of ours. But if they're not in the room to hear, to learn, and to be trained, then our future that we're talking about through data will crush and fall quicker than what we know because they're not in the room and their voices are not being heard. So thank you for the opportunity, and I'm compelling, I'm asking, not just you, because you lead us all, but we're in a room full of leaders. Reach out and adopt one youth today, and in the next 30 days, teach them how your role can help them, because that's what we're missing and that's what we need. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Jack. And in addition to taking that to heart in terms of reaching out, as a former student member of the board who felt responsible for representing a lot of students, I mean, it's important. And so we will both take that as a planning feedback for the next forum, but also as the leaders in this room bring on young people and they become leaders in your own organization. I believe everyone was at least able to bring 2 representatives, so consider bringing along a young person as sort of the leader within your community as part of that. So it's not just we have to find youth organizations to have representation here. We have we want to have diverse voices, and then certainly that's an important part of that conversation. So thank you for that.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for all the leaders in the room, for your help, your volunteer, your diligence, and the work that you're performing in your community. And thank you, County Executive. My name is Roberta Kelly, and I'm the president for the Stevenswood Improvement Association. My former president, as some of you may know, was Ella Campbell, who is deceased and gone on, and then it was Aaron Plummer. I'm the 3rd president of that association ever in 50 years. But my concern was, since this is a general forum, I have to cut my grass. And if I don't cut my grass, somebody comes around from your office, code enforcement, and says something. So on Liberty Road, I like to have that same thing done for these businesses who don't cut the grass on their forefront. It makes it look raggedy, it makes it look unkept, so maybe we could push that out there as well. And then the other concern that I have is in that neighborhood, there are people who live in there. I personally knock on doors. I'm not ashamed to knock on your door until you move your stuff and you violate the code. But there are people who park their work trucks, their work vehicles, they park their junk cars at their staging here and transferring somewhere else. They have their tractor trailers parked here, and and they're parking their car in the wrong direction on the streets and things. So we'd like to see something done about all of that, if that is all possible. Like I said, I'll put a note on your car in a heartbeat. So they'll get something from me, but it would be nice to get something from the county too. And thank you for your work.
Thank you. I'll just say all things are possible, whether it's the conversations here or from our budget conversations. Some things we can just do. Some things will require, work and planning. Some things will require a budget. Some things might require a change to the law. But I walk into this work feeling like anything is possible, even if we have to do changes to get there. So.
Yes, Dave Cash, I'm going to say Baltimore County resident. We talked about what we can do to improve the communities, what the county can do. One of the biggest questions I think that I would like to address, and I'm sure a lot of other people would, is you mentioned your economic development. One of the biggest problems that leads to road issues and things like that is the economic growth that has taken over Baltimore County. I believe we need to see your initiative to slow that growth down. I know we need the tax revenue and things like that, but the economic growth is going untouched for too many years in the county. I want to know what you might be able to do to curb that.
So again, transparency, I love growth. I love economic development. I love to see new investment. I love to see revitalization of our communities. It has to be done thoughtfully, right? So what we have to do is plan for that growth and actually manage around it. So part of what we're doing now is we're finishing up our 10-year master plan. That should really help inform where and how that growth is actually implemented, that it's done consistent with our communities and their history, what their unique needs are in a community, so that we're putting growth in the right places, and that we're also ensuring that we're not having growth not be paid for as part of it, right? So whether that is the tax revenue that comes with it. Frankly, one of the first things I did, Baltimore County was one of the few jurisdictions that didn't have impact fees anywhere in the state of Maryland. Now, we probably missed 40 years of having those resources. I see Pat laughing here in front of me, right? There's 40 years of missed opportunity to have infrastructure costs as part of the build out. I think there are opportunities to improve our current law. Certainly want to work with the next council to take a look at that. But having growth is not a bad thing. I think as long as we're paying for it and doing it in a way that is consistent with community wants, needs, and desires, and it's actually planned out. So, but I think I understand sort of the premise and the point there.
Hi, I'm Jim Hock. I'm president of Polish Quarters Improvement Association. Recently, and you talk about growth, and growth is a problem. Okay, and the problem is this. We have properties that are RC5 and RC20 right now. We went in August to the planning board. The CP Crane power plant is being totally torn down. They turned around, it's outside the URDL, which means water and sewer should not be going in there. When the property was purchased, our councilwoman said, why are you buying it? You can't develop it. Now all of a sudden, we went in August and the room was packed with people saying it can't be developed, it shouldn't have water and sewer. You came up with a Plan C. Plan C said they were worried that they were going to develop the 75 homes, which is the max they can do under those zoning laws. They want 400 in there, okay? On top of that, they turned around and said, well, they could use septic and they could use well water. They can't either because it won't perk for one. So now they've passed, the planning board voted 11-2 in favor of allowing water and sewer to come in to that property, which then will allow it to be developed. And then they'll go in front of the CZMP and then rezone that. Now, why do we even have zoning if we have RC5 and RC20? This is right on the water of the Chesapeake Bay. Why are we allowing that to happen? Now, the sad part was 2 of the council people that are right next to it voted against it. The other 11 voted for it. They don't have anything to do with that area. Now, on top of that, Roz says, we had 200 acres this year. Well, guess what? On Earls Road, where the forage is, it's 400 and some acres. They just said they'll split that 215 will come to the county, or it'll come to the thing to be used for a county thing. That's more than you got right there. But the other acreage, they wanted to put 6 million square feet of warehousing in there, or 2,000 homes. Earls Road is 1 lane in and 1 lane out. We have no infrastructure. You talk about you like the development and growth, okay? We have no way. C.P. Crane said, we'll take the old railroad tracks out, and we'll take the power lines that BGE no longer is using, and we'll run a road out to Eastern Avenue. All that does is move the traffic 1 block over. We still have the failing intersections at Earls Road, we'll still have them at Always Quarters Road, and we'll have it at Carroll Island. Now, if that's developed down there, that's gonna tear us up and we can't get out of our communities now. On top of that, you talk about green space. You're throwing away green space right there that should not be developed. It's critical bay, it's on the thing, and the planning board just went 11-2. Now, Councilman Marks I've talked to and Councilwoman Bevins, they both said, yep, it's still gotta go through the county council before that's done. The URL doesn't have to be moved, and it shouldn't be moved. And every developer that's come in there since that was sold by BG&E to Raven Power and 4 other companies had made money on that thing. When does them making money stop when it's always impacting our community?
Thank you, Claus. So the first thing is, as someone who lives on the water, near the water, has grown up on it my entire life, I appreciate all of the concerns you raise. When it comes to water and sewer, in many respects, sometimes we do extend it beyond the hurdle, not necessarily for development purposes, but for health and safety. And so there was recently a job done near where I live on North Point Road, down from Sparrowsburg High School, outside of the hurdle, because it needed to replace failing septic systems.
But it
So
was existing stuff there. This has nothing there. That's the difference.
Sure. Okay. But I'm saying, like, I wasn't there for the planning board decision there, but I'm just saying in general, that's part of why sometimes we do want to run water and sewer outside. Sure. And I will say I have been clear and consistent in my position. The URL should be as it is. There should be no changes to or expansions to the URL. And in addition to the water and sewer having to go to county council, any zoning changes has to go through the county council. And so if your community, and any community, doesn't want to see development, the way things operate in Baltimore County is the council has pretty absolute control over zoning in this county. And I think in some ways, frankly, it's caused some challenges because you can have one council member have the entire council's support their position. But in the case of being able to have a council member that supports your position, which it sounds like it does, I don't see how any development of the size or scale or magnitude you're talking about can go forward. So I would encourage continued conversations to make sure that they understand the concerns of the community. And to the extent anything does happen, what we try to do in any development is be much more intentional about having that infrastructure be built out alongside to handle whatever might come. But I don't know that given the position of the council members that would happen. So.
Guys, you can stop that cycle 40 sewer water, because when it goes through the county planning board, it must come through you to get to the county council. So just,
thanks, Scott.
I'd like you to exercise that authority and stop that sewer water change. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Sir, we have one relevant comment.
Sure.
Very quickly, County Executive, it seems like the one thing that would incorporate all of what we're hearing, all of what we're seeing, is not on our agenda. What happened to the master plan? And we're 2 years behind on that, but that should reflect all of the larger concerns that all of these communities are expressing, and we should be able to participate and rely on that. And I don't know where it is, it's not available.
Yeah, I agree. Two things happened with the master plan, and I'll let Director Lafferty talk about it. One is the pandemic, I think, slowed us down, but also we've also been more intentional and deliberate about community outreach. It's part of the conversation, so that historically it's been a pretty county-heavy driven process. I think part of that outreach, but if you could give an update, Director Lafferty, and then we'll do one or two more so we can get away to lunch.
That's fine.
Director Lafferty.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. County Executive. Yes, we did get started late, as you pointed out, Kathleen. We really didn't start until late 2020 after we finished the CZMP, which had taken another whole year. And as many of you know, and many of you participated in our multiple WebEx outreach meetings, we had more than 1,000 people participate over time. We're getting close on our draft master plan. I have a meeting actually on Thursday of this week to see where we are. We've continued to lose time because of some staffing issues, but we're, I think, pretty close on the draft.
Yes, hi, my name is Carrie, and I'm from the Greystone Community Association. We're in the Glen Oak area. Our biggest complaint is nuisance crimes and nuisance violations. Someone mentioned the cars that are backfiring. If you go down the road, you'll see burnouts. Local businesses, whenever they're open, it's just free parking on the parking lots, across the streets, blocking the streets. The police say, well, that's for outreach. Outreach says that's for the local patrols to handle. It's this shape, one hand to the other. The other problem that we're having is knowing which organization handles something. And trust me, they don't even know. Because it'll be, oh, that's a police matter. No, that's a code enforcement matter. Well, if it's on their property, it's code enforcement. If it's on the street, and these issues can go between the two. We need the organizations, the agencies to work together. I know they know each other. So John can call Dave in one department and say, hey, can you handle this? It should be able to move, especially with community associations that are tracking issues. They don't even know. And I'm not saying it's a matter of you've got the wrong department, it's a matter of, oh no, go to this, oh go to the state, go to this. The other thing is once we start a ticket or we start an action, we need responses from the organizations, the agencies. We need to know where that stands. Or if it's dead in the water and we need to start something new, we're not getting that. We think we've accomplished something a month, 6 weeks, and that's valuable time when you're trying to go after a situation.
Sure, thank you for that feedback.
And the other thing, I love the polling.
Last one that we're going to transition over to lunch.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Danielle Singley, and I'm wearing 2 hats as a constituent representing Westview Park in 21228, and also the Randallstown NAACP. My comments will be brief. The first issue that I have not heard talked about today at all has been in regards to our commercial planning, and also as we talk about the master plan, we are having a redundancy of businesses, the same types of businesses on the west side of Baltimore County, like with grocery stores, but a whole lot of storage units, a whole lot of car washes, a whole lot of other things that we don't need. We need diversity in the types of businesses that we have so that we can retain those dollars in our county funds and not go out to Howard County and other counties to spend our money. And the last thing is I want to support what this table here said about code enforcement, but illegal dumping is another issue in our community that doesn't seem to fit nicely, neatly in any particular department, and particularly Purnell Road, which is in Glen Oak, and right on the Gwynns Falls watershed is an epidemic of dumping that goes on there. Mattresses, all kinds, everything but the kitchen and the kitchen sink is there. The tax goes well. We have people coming from other counties even, dumping things. I've actually been out there and looked at some of the garbage and can attest to that. So we need some resources for that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I just want to say I appreciate the open dialogue. Thank you for the feedback on the questions. I do hope that as you transition into lunch, it's an opportunity to continue to interact with maybe individuals you haven't talked to, so that you can talk about how your challenges are similar or different. Like anyone else, we are proud of what we've done together, but we certainly know that we can do and be better always, and so we're always aspiring to do that. So I'm going to turn things over to Mandy to give directions for lunch, and I wish you all the best as you transition beyond lunch into the workshops. Thanks so much for coming out today, everybody.
One more, and I know you had your hand up for a little while, so if you wanted to go ahead and just share your comment real quick, then we'll go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. I really appreciate this summit that the county executives put together, and I'm overwhelmed to see all these community leaders in here. As being a community leader, we all need to work together from all sides of the tracks. But regarding the organizational tools, I'm the director for the White Marsh Police Community Relation Council, and I'm also the president of the board of directors. Our biggest challenge is recruiting the new members. We have the same people that come month after month, and the only time that others come or are interested in anything is if there's an issue. And you can't just come because there's an issue. Everybody needs to partnership together, and I would like to see that happen throughout the county, not just in my area of Rosedale. On another level, the litter, trash, and code enforcement issues. Many years ago, the Department of Rec and Parks used to have, I guess their own crew and team that would go to the detention center and take the less violent criminals out, and they would go and they would clean up the trash up and down the highway, up and down your street. I think that needs to be revisited and executed like ASAP. Because all over this county, there's nothing but trash, junk, and debris. And I'll preface on 695 at Philadelphia Road, between the carts and everything from the shopping mall, which is a disaster with their trash, junk, and debris as well. And we know that that all creates four-legged critters that we don't want to see. I mean, they were here before us, they'll be here after us, but I think that we could all do something together and, you know, make it more positive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. What do you guys think? How's the live poll go? I know, again, it's great for us to engage and just kind of get a little bit of feedback. So thank you all for participating and bearing with us if one of your choices weren't on there, if you couldn't pick more than one. So we are going to do lunch now. We have that set up for you out in the hall. The vendor tables will be open, our department tables will be open. You can kind of mix and mingle. You can grab lunch, come in here, sit down, go back out there. So this is just a very casual moment here while we go through lunch. We will, after people get their lunch and come back in, we'll start to go over the workshops. A lot of the concerns or inquiries you all raised here to the county executive, we have great workshops set up for you today. So again, we'll go back over all of the workshop schedule once lunch is complete. So I would say we could start to kind of dismiss maybe this side of the room, and you can head on out to our lunch tables.